Hey guys, my name is Alexis Magri. I'm a local Sydney mortgage broker. I'm just based in Macquarie Park. Um, and you're here today with Online Prosperity and myself to bring you some of the wonders and I guess facts about what we do and how we are able to help clients. And I guess getting to know a bit about myself as well. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys there.
Gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the number one place to unlock exclusive content, deep insights, and real strategies to solve the financial, business, and life problems you could be facing today. So if you've ever felt lost in the maze of home loans, interest rates, lenders, or just wish somebody could simplify money talk so you could sleep easier, I think this episode is for you. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today I'm delighted to introduce Alex Magri of Magroxela Finance Private Limited. Now, Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm going great, thanks. Russell, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. I'm really excited about this because, a lot of people would rather talk about sex than talk about money. We're talking about money today. So I'm really excited about what we're going to be able to unfold. But before we jump into this, Alex, is there something that you just wanted to let our audience or viewers know?
Yeah, I think just in general, this whole conversation is just based around being able to open light as to what a lot of people find daunting, which is finance. And at the end of the day, whilst none of this is going to be financial advice because everyone's circumstances are different, I think it's a good way to just really, what they don't teach you in schools and what, you have to figure out on your own, just something that helps you, give you that extra bit of information to get you going along.
Fantastic. And thank you so much. Now that we've got the legalese out of the way, for those that are watching right now, Alex, as I said, is widely known as the mortgage broker wizard at Aussie Home Loans in Macquarie Park. And Alex is not just helping people navigate home loans with clarity and long-term strategy, but he also has a second life, which we're going to be hearing all about. So apparently when you become a settled client with Alex, he actually comes in and installs your TV wall mount for free. Yeah, that's right. So it comes with all these perks, and he becomes your broker and your handyman all at once. So whether it's interest rates or just drilling through plasterboard, Alex has got you covered. But before we go in, I want you, the listener, to really get ready for what you're about to jump into. Every time we speak to a mortgage broker, I want you to really understand, how can I work with this person? Because each and every one of them might have access to the same lenders, but they don't have access to the same history. So expect to be inspired, challenged, and maybe even made a little bit uncomfortable in good ways, as we're going to be digging into Alex, past, the hurdles he's also faced, and any aha moments that make him different, especially at a time where trust and the finance world has really been worn thin, and so many people are afraid to be sold rather than helped. And I'm hoping by the end of this episode, you'll be able to understand not only why someone like Alex may be the right person that would be there to help you with your home loan, but also you would also be connecting, your journey to what is being shared in this particular conversation today. Now, Alex, I could go on and talk about things that I'm not even qualified to talk about. And before we know it, maybe the RBA has already issued another new interest rate that we now need to focus on. Tell us a little bit about your journey and what actually got you started in the finance world.
It was actually a bit of a spur of the moment, I should say. It was during COVID time when, as you may have just said, that I was a TV installer beforehand for a few years, and I had my own business running there for a few years, on and off Airtasker and referrals, some of you may have heard of. And at that point, when COVID lockdown first happened in I don't even remember now, but a long time ago almost. But essentially, there was that moment where I was, everyone was stuck in house for 3 months, and obviously I couldn't do any labor work at that time. So it got me thinking about, well, maybe I should upskill, learn something new. And real estate always sort of caught my mind. My dad used to be a stockbroker, so I mean, there was also that little, and he's a mathematician as well. So there was always that, aspiration, inspiration to work with numbers, or at least just help clients in general. And so that's when, initially I started to look at businesses to buy, because I had, I was running a pretty good TV mounting business, and that was that was going really strong. And then, Aussie came up, I looked at that, thought, oh, how about I give this a go? And it wasn't even I'm going to be a mortgage broker. It was, I want to be a business owner still, and mortgage broking was a path to become that business owner as well. And then 3 years later, I'm pretty happy with how things are tracking and the amount of people I've already helped. So it was never planned, but it's everything's come to definitely a good alignment in life.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that sort of tidbit of information about yourself. So how were you growing your business, in the TV mounting days?
So it was through the online platform app called Airtasker. That was how I initially started off, getting a lot of business through that. And from there, referrals also came to be from every single client. And so a lot of the time I'd be doing almost 2 to 3 TVs per day, sometimes even more.
Absolutely.
It just kept spiraling over, yeah.
Absolutely. You see, referrals come from relationships, and this is something that a lot of business people struggle with, especially when it comes to that sort of, part of their business. Now, when you were showing up at these people's place, to mount their TV and things like that, did you maybe make small talk with them, or were you just going in, show me where you want the TV, and started measuring and looking for stronger parts of their plasterboard?
So I'd always feel awkward if it was just, doing the work. I'm at that place and then just in and out. A lot of clients were always curious as well. And so, at the end of the day, I wanted to make conversation. So rather than and I almost had a process as well where simply, I'll go in, say hello, introduce myself, and go to where they first want the TV, and then as I'm prepping the workstation up, lining up where the TV is going to go, I'll be having conversation with them at that point, making sure that professionalism was there and that they're being heard. I think that was a very key point, and that, I guess, differentiated me between other possible TV installers. Just simply, I'd had clients say, oh wow, like, the other guy just put it wherever and, didn't confirm heights, and, we just went with it because we thought he was an professional installer. And for me, it was, I wanted to have that rapport building just from lining up where the TV is going to go and confirming, hey, does this feel right with you? And that just extra few minutes of preparation really built that rapport. And then obviously as I'm, putting the arms on the TV and drilling into the wall, I just have small talk with the client, ask what they do for work, because I'm always interested in what people do and how the world works. And they always have everyone, half of clients' day job or life is really their job, and so it's going to be a massive talk for most of their life. And so I think it's just something important to always be interested in what they have to say. And I've learned a lot, even just from meeting. I've met top mortgage brokers in Australia. I've met CEOs, And just in general, the stories are just, and you learn something new, right? It's not that you can't know everything in life, but you can keep learning.
You know what I like about that? Because when somebody is putting a TV within their house, it does say an average adult watches 3 to 4 hours of TV every single day, which
Yeah,
means that that's a considerable chunk of their day that they're in front of that device. And if it's not
yeah,
positioned well, or it's not suiting their lifestyle or the plan of their house, then that might actually be, detrimental to their well-being and things of that nature. Would you maybe put
absolutely.
this to be the same as putting somebody in front of a loan?
Oh, 100%. It's you want to. It's like I said. It's everyone's circumstances are different, and it's never going to just be a one size fits all. And whilst there is standards and guidelines and whatnot, and yeah, you're going to have friends and family, telling, oh, you should have the TV amount higher, or you should have an offset account for a home loan. It's like, well, not necessarily. Everyone doesn't need an offset account, and some people can't afford to pay higher interest rates sometimes, or higher ongoing fees just to have an offset account. It doesn't work for them. So yeah, and then for TVs, ergonomic wise, I always say that is you don't want to be feeling like you're at the front of the cinema, and that's my go-to line, because at the end of the day, it's true, it's factual that if you're at the front of the cinema, you're going to feel like you're looking up all the time, and imagine that for hours on end. So yeah, it's like it definitely, both businesses synergize quite well with each other, not just from a point of view of dealing with clients, but just the basic principles of ensuring that their needs are met.
Absolutely. See, I mean, at the end of the day, half of the time, a lot of people don't quite see the connection in whatever it is that they're doing and how it actually affects the way they treat their customers. Remember, I asked you first, how do you get in front of clients? Because so many people, when they're starting a business as well, the one thing that they're usually afraid of is getting in front of people, especially if they don't have any experience. Now, when you started going into finance and broking, did you have any fears, especially when it came to getting in front of people and having to explain to them or sell to them a product or things of that nature? Because that's usually the scariest part.
Yes, definitely. I still remember my first appointment and the amount of nerves that came through me. I didn't even expect it. This was just a walk-in one night. It was there in the office till about 6 p.m. A client walked in, and the receptionist like, "Oh, look, we got a walk-in. Do you want to take it? No other brokers here." And I was like, "Oh, I can't say no." So I jumped the gun. Had that first appointment. Luckily, I had my colleague that was there to assist just with any other, um, just little hiccups here and there if I said something wrong or just needed a correction. But at the end of the day, yeah, that first client ended up settling anyway, so that was a success, and I can never forget that one moment where I can keep doing this. I've done the hard part. I've already got through that first initial stage of actually having a real life scenario, real life appointment. Thankfully, it was easy in the sense of the mortgage broking world, but yeah, it was something I had to overcome, and obviously you can't put off not doing any appointments. You just have to go through it, and really, if you don't know the question, it's always fine to not know everything, and I think it's something where as long as you're willing to do the work to find that information, I think that's what a lot of people care more about is commitment to their needs. Yeah, you can be smart, intelligent, say all the right things at the right time, but if you're not helping them from start to finish, and you end up not communicating with them or being slow, or that all falls off the rails. So yeah.
Absolutely. And congratulations on that. I mean, at any given moment, a lot of people are very afraid on their first part at work, but you said you had to actually learn everything from scratch. You're not coming from a finance background. A lot of mortgage brokers would have maybe had a bit of a stint in the
Yeah.
bank or worked around paperwork and finances and things of that nature. What were maybe some of the early sort of hurdles or mistakes that you might have made that turned out to actually be lessons in disguise, because half of these things you actually learn by doing and as you
Yeah.
progress.
I think to mitigate, because I was always I don't want to make, especially in the finance field, you don't really want to make any mistakes because mistakes can cost you in this line of work. So my small mistakes would just probably be the paperwork, just asking for too much paperwork or and whatnot that's not required at the end of the day. And I think just processes and trying to keep it as efficient as possible. Sometimes, when you ask for too much, it ends up delaying the process more because when you supply it, the banks don't need it, but now they have to look at it. And so you end up with more questions than what you could have left with if you just didn't supply as many documents, right? That's not required. So I think learning how to make it as efficient as possible and just require what's needed and reading the actual checklist, because most of the time, there is a checklist and sometimes you just have to follow it step by step and get through it. But it's hard because I always really wanted to ensure everything went smoothly, and there's just times where in finance it never goes smoothly, and so you have to work with it, be flexible, and over the years I've really learned to just keep my head in the game, listen to music in the background, but just focus on what's important and take out all the other fluff as well. And yeah.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for that. Now, since we're still starting, with how you got started and things like that, when you sort of started writing deals, did you have, because some people are really inclined to make sure that lender, is satisfied, but also you've got the duty of care to look after the client to make sure that you're actually doing right by the client rather than just closing a deal. Do you have any sort of story that you thought you had actually messed it all up, but you actually learned from it?
That's definitely a good question. If any of the mistakes had to happen, it would be in the early stages anyway. I'm happy to look at my past because I guess after a certain few deals, I remember every single deal I've done, but the process in between, I might not remember every single little mistake. So let me just have a quick check on my portfolio. If I had to say, let's just say, for example, there was just some, deals where, you'd think, well, can this person afford it? And there's times where I really just had to say, now's not the right time. So I never want to sort of what they call maximize borrowing capacity if it's not required. That's where I've started to learn more that it's not always about the maximum loan, but rather what their goals are for the future and trying to align it to theirs, to their wants and needs. And obviously one of them is, you could borrow $1 million, but is that a lifestyle that you're willing to sacrifice for? Because when you borrow that amount of money, you tend to, depending on your income and whatnot, but you may tend to sacrifice more on holidays. And so that wasn't something I guess I would have completely had a conversation about initially. Was, okay, well, you've listed your expenses, but we haven't really included maybe your potential one-off holidays. And it depends, everyone, holiday industry and travel industry is one of the biggest industries out there. And so having that conversation now upfront about, well, like, does this repayment suit you? Like, are you able to have extra funds, to save up for a holiday, rather than, being a mortgage prisoner, as what some people will call it, where they're just always worrying about the next repayment.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, what you're talking about there is literally helping people to not sit in the front of the cinema. Because if you're mortgaged up to $1 million and that's just giving you enough to breathe, you can only imagine what that would look like for somebody moving forward. So, moving forward, when did things start to shift? When did you start actually seeing clients referring organically? Because that's also something that was already happening in your old business. And when clients start to refer organically, then you've somehow arrived and people now have a bit of a trust, that they didn't die, or if they send people to you, they're not going to be, put in front of the front row of a cinema, so to speak. And
so that really started happening, I'd say, a lot more this year. Like, I've been in it now for 3 years, and whilst it may not seem like a long time compared to some of the 20-year senior brokers and whatnot, I think I've done a healthy amount of deals to be proficient at it. I still would not consider knowing everything, but I don't think all brokers know everything as well, because the industry always changes. There's always new schemes. 1st of October, the federal government changes, coming in for first-time buyers. So it's always adapting, and policies with banks are always changing. So, it's impossible to know everything. But as long as you have the resources and know how to get the information, as I said before, things can start moving a lot more quickly. With going back to your question, sorry, I sometimes go on a tangent, but going back to your question, after this year, I'm starting to really get a lot more referrals, and I'm starting to understand that, as long as you stay in it for the long game, they will come, as long as you do a good job. And I think, just the clients to refer you to other, like to their friends and family, there's already a big level of trust, because you're talking about finances here. You're not just talking about a TV this time. A TV might be a couple of $1,000s, but we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, and a livelihood at stake. And so, each referral is almost a sentiment to the success you built and the rapport you built for that client itself, and how you've helped them along the way. And then there's times where I've been getting referrals when I haven't even settled the deal yet. I've helped them just up to maybe pre-approval stage, but they haven't even found a property. But the fact that I've already set that foundation from the start as to how we're going to help you, I'm always here to, and I mean, one of the main differences with being able to get referrals, I think, is just the ease of availability. At the end of the day, for me to become successful, and this has always been more of a grind mindset, but you have to be available outside of the clock, outside of normal banking hours, because when the bank's not open, between 9 to 5 p.m., like when they're open 9 to 5 p.m. and when they're not open, that's the chance where brokers can really show why there's 80% of deals done in Australia, almost 80% of deals done in Australia through brokers. It's simply having that level of communication that is, generally speaking, when you got professional workers, they will need a contact after hours because they're busy throughout the day. And that, I think that actually helped a lot with getting referrals. Is I'm always being 25, 26 years old now, I'm always on the phone. So each text I get, I try to reply as soon as possible. And I think a lot of clients do value that as well.
Absolutely. Now, I think you're absolutely right. Even your first deal came in at like 6 p.m., and, it's things like that. Everybody else is busy throughout the day, and it's only when they're on their way home that they would maybe think, oh, wait a minute, I might as well grab, tomorrow's bread and also tomorrow's loan with this guy's here,
Exactly.
all at the same time, thinking in that way. Now, you did mention your age. I mean, obviously, you did mention you're 25 and things like that. Doesn't that, I mean, obviously, in areas like Australia, age is really not much of something to, look at. But do you find that maybe some people might just be a little bit hesitant to work with you because they might think you haven't gotten that much experience, especially when it comes to these heavy matters?
See, it was funny. I used to always think that way for the first probably 2.5 years, two to 2.5 years in the industry. I questioned my authority and how that might play out to, I guess, yeah, to the clients and what they may think of me. And it came to the point where, as I've started to do more deals and started to learn and, how to find the answers, as I've said, there was a point in time where that confidence changed, where it's like, well, I know I'm a good broker now because I've settled quite a few loans now, and I've done the hard yards of trying to really learn the business from scratch. And it's funny because there'd be some clients that will look at me up and down, pretty, like, I do like to wear a suit and whatnot. It does add a bit of age to me, so I look a bit more older than I am. But there'll be times where it's just too hot to wear a suit, so I'll just be in like the Aussie top and whatnot. But they look me up and down, see that I'm young, and then as soon as I start talking, start really articulating words that I know in the mortgage broking space, there'll be older gentlemen, 50 plus, talking and telling me, wow, you are really knowledgeable on this. And their whole perspective of me changed, and now they come back every so often and say hello, and then it felt good when they came back to say, wow, this property did go up to this amount that you anticipated and whatnot, and definitely listening to your recommendations, suggestions next time about how it's going to play out. And I think that was one of the key moments as well, where I thought, well, if I can get an older client who's pretty experienced because he's got a lot of properties come to me and say, wow, you're right, it just solidifies the fact that age doesn't really matter, and it's just how hard you're willing to work and learn the information yourself. So it's all about delivery, and it's all about just being actively communicative to the client, because as long as you're doing that, like, they don't think about age, they just think, wow, this guy really is wanting to help me, and they respect that more than just an old, slower communicator.
Absolutely. Now, I mean, obviously, a lot of people, if they could, they would go past the 3 property mark. But obviously, with the way the system is set up and just the way things are, a lot of people are already skeptical getting their first mortgage to start off with. You know what I mean? Because there's this whole misconception around debt and thinking that when you're in a mortgage, that means till death or things of that nature. And some people actually believe mortgage brokers are just salespeople that are pushing maybe high commissions and hidden fees and just going to anybody who can pay them the highest bid, based on whatever they're presenting to them. What are maybe some of the misconceptions that that are in your industry that you obviously know and you wish a lot more people would understand, and maybe you can debunk them and
I actually did have an initial, I guess, content media post I wanted to do about myth versus fact, and just breaking down really what is out there and why I guess you should trust a mortgage broker. And I mean, look, there is always going to be the bad apples. At the end of the day, it's no industry is perfect, but there is a level of regulations involved, especially post 2019 with the Royal Commission, that came into play that started to weed out a lot of the, I guess, your dodgy brokers or the ones that just were going for the higher commissions and whatnot. And that comes down to the best interests duty regulation that came into play, and the National Consumer Credit Protection Act. And part of that, not to get too factual, but part of that is really just to, you have to have detailed notes as to why you've provided the loan to the client. And that's compliance, and there's a, and these are broken down as well, right? And at the end of the day, it's all about policy. We're more so I'd say a policy matcher, if anything. The rate is good if we can get the best rate, but policy matters more. And for some people who are, standard, let's say a simple deal, PAYGs, full-time employee, working there for 20% deposit. Like, at the end of the day, you can get a pretty good rate with a lot of banks, and But for those who, are buying, let's just say, high density apartments or high rises, there might be certain restrictions there, and that they may not know about. So we try to match policy first, and at the end of the day, our commissions as well is generally disclosed to the client, and based on that. So it's hard because at the back end we know what our commissions are, but I never really focus on that. And there's clients where I put deals too with lower commission payouts because that was the best product for them at that time, and I'd rather that and have a happy customer and be able to nurture them than lose a client. Because at the end of the day, it's a very, trying to figure out the right word, but short tenure, if that makes sense with, bank books. Clients would go with one bank, they're not happy, and then refinance. And there's a lot of the myth, there's myths there that if you, facts there that if you refinance and you do it through a broker, there's now clawbacks. I don't know if I'm getting too technical on this, but brokers get clawbacks, and that's part of the industry where if a client leaves for 2 years generally, they get a pro rata where, let's say you get paid $5,000 commission, you end up having to pay back the bank $2,500, for example, if the client left for 2 years. So that is something that we have to, navigate with, but at the same time, we just have to be open. So that's why maintaining the client relationship at the start and giving them a good rate will probably save you a lot of time of them shopping around, because their rate was pretty high at the start because, let's say, that bank paid high commission. To find that there is a lower rate bank, they go with them, and then, you get your clawback. So at the end of the day, it is still under our due diligence and best interest to ensure that that client is a forever client, if possible. Like, not everyone wants to stick with the broker, but I found that in that 3 years, a lot of people do come back. Surprisingly, not surprisingly, I'm a good broker, right? But it's that there are people that do come back and really trust you, and I think that's an important factor. And as long as they felt like they're on a good rate and they've been heard, that's all that matters, and they'll come back.
Because obviously you're absolutely right. Every 3 years, somebody's life changes. Maybe a new child, or change of school, or maybe they want to downsize or refinance or things of that nature. So if you maintain open relations with them, they will definitely be coming back to see if they're still maybe in the good money.
And I'd rather like if I just have to put a client on, let's say, a higher rate bank because they pay more commission, I'll definitely lose that client in almost 1 to 2 years, and then I pay the penalties as well for it. So there's no real point to do it that way, but rather keep them happy at the start. And there might be a reason why they might be on the higher rate, like they like the bank, or just policy wise, like I said, there's some policies that just fit better with those banks, but they might have a higher rate. But as long as that's also disclosed to the client, as long as we set a sort of a frame where, look, right now you might be casual, and some banks are just better with casual, so this bank will lend you more, but for the time being you stick with that bank, and then we look at restructuring and refinancing in the next few years as you either go to part-time or full-time, or just even your casual income now meets a lot of banks' policies, and restructure in that way.
Now, tell us a little bit about what it is that you do now, your actual service model. Do you work with first-home buyers, investors, or people that are looking to refinance? And also, I've noticed you do seminars and things of that nature, just so that people can know what to engage you with.
I've always tried to find a niche, but right now, even after 3 years, it's very diversified. I've got a lot of first-time buyers, but also a lot of investors and refinance applications. Even self-managed super funds would sometimes come through. Not a lot, but sometimes they would come through. Self-employed, medical specialists. So based in Macquarie Park, there's a hospital, and there's a lot of professional business workers, so they do come through quite a lot. But I wouldn't say right now I have a niche. I do handle most of it as well, by myself as well. So yeah.
Oh, and if somebody's watching this right now, what sort of a person would you want to work with, or what should they start prepping in order to make that initial call with you as smooth as possible?
Honestly, just their honesty. At the end of the day, the papers don't lie. I don't want to say forged, but like that's on them. But at the end of the day, as long as they, have the pay slips, or even if they're like, I've even dealt with uni students who want to start having a plan set in motion and want to know how, with the current schemes and what we could possibly do, and almost, educate them to say, well, look, yes, you don't have the deposit right now, but this is what the deposit you'll need eventually. This is sort of the salary you'll need to buy properties of X amount. So we work out a plan, and there'll be times where, they'd come after graduating 3 years later, they come back and say, I'm ready to buy. So anyone really is as long as they're willing to, help themselves by obviously supplying documents and giving information. That's all that matters. Like, there's no ideal. Ideal client is 20% deposit, ready to go, found a property, but it's not always going to be that way. And so, I think at the end of the day, as long as the client has some sort of motivation that they want to buy a property, I'm happy to help. Either way, because it's a ripple effect, right? You help them at the start, but they may not be ready, but someone might be. And as long as you help them from as long as you give them all the information, like I said, people who have got a pre-approval and haven't even settled yet have been referring people. So it's a ripple effect. Even the smaller loans, like a lot of brokers will turn that away, like, oh, it's 100,000 loan, 200,000 loans, not enough pay. I'd rather, at the end of the day, you're just turning away potential business that could spiral, because it's not about the loan size as such. Yeah, I'd say it's, you take some time to really nurture that client, but I've had 200,000 loans turn into $2 million loans, because at that time they just wanted this loan, and then later on they wanted a different loan and different structure. So it's a long game.
Oh, absolutely. Now, obviously, you did mention, you sometimes have students coming to you, and maybe younger people that are also wanting a plan so they can start working towards something. Now, if you could maybe go back to the version of you that was doing the handyman tasks on Airtasker, and some sort of, mortgage broker was, just sitting on their couch and just watching you work and asking you questions and things of that nature, what sort of advice would you have wanted them to give you at that time that would have prepared you to be on the path that you're on right now?
Sorry, as in to be a mortgage broker, or?
Yeah, so what sort of advice would you, maybe if you have that opportunity, give any younger person, who's maybe on the way up?
I think the biggest piece of advice to those who are for those wanting to borrow money to buy a property, or so I'm just trying to get my head around the question.
No. Any advice to young people that, like you say, you give advice to kids that are, at university, what is it that you're telling them?
Look, I'm more or less telling them what, like, I guess I'm educating as to what the potentials are. Like at the end of the day, it's at the end of the day, it's gonna eventually, there's, like I said, there's going to be more schemes available, or there's changes in policies, but I just give them a general overview of, well, let's say if you want to buy, $600,000 property, right? And then I show them there's a few of them around at the moment. We go through hypotheticals of, well, assuming that hypothetically the stamp duty exemption is still available in New South Wales up to 800,000, and hypothetically, if the 5% deposit scheme is available, 5% of the 600,000, so 30,000, plus what the conveyancer fees are going to be, and what the potential strata report fees and government fees are going to be. So educating them in the sense of what is required as a deposit to purchase a property of X amount. And it gives them a good insight as to, well, the fact as well that, even if you have a deposit, if your income is, let's say you graduate high school and you're expecting a 100K income, and then based on, average median salaries based on your, certificate qualifications, if you earn, 100,000 based on that, this is what you could potentially afford. Now, all of this is just variables, but it's a good insight as to, it almost gives a motivation of, okay, well, I definitely want to at least start trying to save for 30K, knowing that that's how much minimum is potentially needed for a deposit on a property. And then it's almost like, well, I could start trying to property hunt and find, companies out there that are willing to pay that salary. Now that I have sort of almost a relatively accurate figure in mind as to what that may require to make the repayments on a $600,000 property. So yeah.
Cool. And if somebody's watching this right now and is thinking that maybe Alex is my guy, where can they go to on the internet, or how can they get a hold of you?
I've got different avenues, but probably, the best one would be just booking an appointment through the website on, aussie.com.au, and then you can actually search Aussie Macquarie Park even, and then usually I'm one of the first ones. If you click on the on Google, I will be at the top, Alexis Magri, and then they can get a hold of me there, or they can just pop in if they're local to the Aussie Macquarie Park store.
Fantastic. All right, I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes below so that people can get excited. Now, when we started, Alex, you introduced us to the handyman that was going around from Airtasker, connecting people to the world via, their television. Now you are connecting people to their future via, mortgages and, things of that nature. What's next? What are you working on now that we're in your world that we might be excited about? Maybe in the next 1 to 2 years, or 3 years, or 4,
It's a hard one, because this line of work is almost, because it changes a lot, and it's always there's always something new, and you're always constantly learning. It's just really about now growing this store to the next stage, which is simply building brand awareness and hopefully doing more seminars and becoming more of the local market mortgage broker, right? Like just how that you would have your top real estate agents in specific suburbs. My next goal would really just be starting to become more known around Aussie Macquarie Park. And it's funny, that's already something that's happening, because I'm bumping into clients, as we're walking to the metro, or, I'll be having a physiotherapy session with one of my clients who's a physiotherapist, and then I'd see another client sitting waiting for my physiotherapist. So it was, and they will know who I'm talking about, but yeah, it's funny how the world works, that as you start getting in front of more people in the local, demographic, you end up being more known in that, and that's something I think would be a good achievement just to be that, Lexis is the go-to mortgage broker in Macquarie Park. And I'm not trying to tackle, globally, or even just all over Australia. I'm just happy with the niche, because at the end of the day, there's enough business for everyone. And, and I'm pretty happy with the way things are panning out for this store, and hopefully there's more to come. But really, yeah, that's the next stage in the 3 to 4 years, is just to grow that identity in that area.
Absolutely, and grow that you are. I mean, obviously, you've just been on the Online Prosperity Show. It's step in the right direction. So I can't thank you enough for the time that you spent with me on the call today, Alex.
No, thank you very much, Prosper.
Too easy. I mean, your life story and your experience have got so much value for those, even if people are just being inspired by the journey that you have taken, because some people just think whatever is in front of them is the cards that they've been dealt. So thank you so much for being so open and obviously sharing the raw stuff, the struggles, the risk, and the little wins that actually led to the big change that you are now experiencing.
100%. Thank you very much.
Good stuff. And for those that are watching right now and listening, I hope you're actually going to walk away with more clarity, a more shifted mindset, and maybe an action or two that you can actually take towards simplifying your own financial life. As we are going to be sharing this podcast to people, especially in New South Wales and the Macquarie area, I also encourage you to help us by sharing this episode with people that are in that particular area if this episode actually struck a chord with you. So maybe you're in a place where you feel like you're doing the wrong job, or where you are not really sure where to get your home loan sorted without a headache. I want you to go check out Alex at Aussie and Macquarie Park, so that you can actually let those struggles be somebody else's, not yours.
Yes.
And I'll be putting in all those links for you to get a hold of him and see how you can get started on your journey. And if somebody has shared this episode with you, welcome. This is the Online Prosperity Show, and we do share ideas that will allow you to have a happier existence. So why don't you subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show so you don't miss out on any of the information that we have in store for you. I don't know what you're going to do with this information, but I hope it's going to help someone do and have a happier existence. Until then, bye for now.